Good morning, welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Wednesday, no it's not, it's Tuesday, June the 17th, 2025. And forgive me, I'm recording this actually on my iPhone this morning because I just went to take my camera out, which I do every single morning, and it was only on 1%. Now, I always fully charge it when I get home, so I've got a feeling that I've left it on overnight. But having said that, it usually turns off by itself if it's on for a certain amount of time. So I don't know what's happened there. So forgive this this camera. I'm probably going to have to switch hands a few times because it's on my. I'm holding it with the hand that I damaged in that workplace accident a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago. The wrist is still pretty sore, but we'll see how we go. Not broken though. That's the good news. Not broken, just badly sprained. So I'm happy about that. And on the mend. So. So if it's a little bit unsteady, then that is why. And I think it films back to front here too, doesn't it? But anyway, we'll move on. Enough of that. All right, on this day, and I can't actually go through all of them today because, of course, I always have them on my phone. I can't film and read at the same time. It can't come up on the screen. So there was just one that was probably the main one, I suppose, of the week or the year. Sorry. Rocky Marciano, back in 1954, defended his world heavyweight title for the third time with a win over Ezzard Charles. That took place in the Bronx in New York. And, of course, Rocky Marciano would go on to be one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Arguably. Now, I don't want to get everyone excited this early in the morning or whenever you're watching this, but in my opinion, arguably one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Very good for his time, but over the journey we've had some great heavyweights. So anyway, that's probably a conversation for another time, isn't it? All right, last night on Talking Boxing, thanks to everyone that tuned in. Probably no surprise, it was all about George Kambosos, or most of it. Everyone having their say about George. Did see some footage with him after the fight, and I think he took the fight very well, actually, or the result pretty well. He was obviously disappointed, but I think he made the point that, you know, he's fought, you know, really good fighters back to back, and got caught with a liver shot, which, you know, the final shot was hard and obviously would have had an effect. But I was really surprised by the ability of Hitchens being so tall to get underneath George, who was so compact. But either way, it had the desired effect. And I think he's philosophical, George. I think he realises that maybe his time in the limelight in that division is probably coming to an end. He's 32 years of age. I think he knows he's done probably as much as he can. And what else are you going to do? He had that win over Lopez. No one can ever take that away from him. Contrary to what a lot of people say, no one can take it away from him. And I did actually say last night, and I think there was I was surprised there wasn't more pushback, but I understand what people think about George, whether be inside the ring or outside the ring. But in my opinion, I said last night that George's resume, as far as the opponents on his record, is superior to any fighter in Australia at the moment. And I think going right back to, you know, the likes of Zoo, Harding, Fennick, these types of guys, I really do. And I know he hasn't beat them. I'm not saying the fighters he's beat, so don't get all excited. What I'm saying is the quality of fighters that he has fought over the journey. So Lopez, Haney, Lomachenko, just those three alone. Haney, Lomachenko, and Lopez, the big three, around that 135 to 140 pound division, and he fought them all with a 1-3 record. Not a bad effort, I think. And then you throw in Hitchens in there, who could quite possibly be one of those fighters going forward. You don't know. He could be one of the equivalent. Not that Haney's probably done a hell of a lot, has he? But he did beat Loma, which is a fantastic effort. But just those three fighters alone, and then you throw in Hitchens as well. Not so much Selby and Bay and these types of guys. I think they were sort of more the gatekeepers at the time as well. And speaking of gatekeepers, it's almost, as the rain comes down here, by the way, speaking of the gatekeeper thing, situation, a few people have said that maybe George becomes that. I don't think that happens, but already there was a young fighter from the UK named Adam. Hang on, I've got my finger over the thing there. I just had to change hands for a sec there. Adam Aziz in the UK has thrown the challenge out to George. I don't really know much about Adam Azim. I did have a quick look. He's 13-0, 10 knockouts, but probably hasn't fought anybody. Well, he's thrown the challenge out to George Kambosos, a day after he's just lost to Hitchens. So I think that is going to happen a little bit more. And that probably goes to show, again, the stature of George Kambosos still in the world scheme. He's still a name. People still want a piece of him. So, like him or not, that is the case. You don't often see, former champions that have just been beaten getting called out the day after, but that happened to George. But no, all that aside, I'm just glad he's in a good frame of mind. I think, as I said, he's realistic about the way or where he's at in his career and what is next. And I just looking at his tone and his body language and everything like that, I've got a feeling that he thinks, or maybe knows, that his time might be up. I don't know. Only he can answer that. But there was a little slight bit of resignation that, hey guys, I've been to the top of the mountain, did the best I could. I fought the best fighters out there, and this might be enough. I know he didn't actually say that, but that's the impression that I got. That's the body language I sort of got from him, that he knows that might be it. Except for the fight with Liam Paro, which I still think is doable. I think it's still big business here in Australia. Not so much, of course, overseas, but here in Australia, it would be a massive fight. Now, as far as the news goes with everything else at the moment, it's not really a lot. We've had Boots Ennis about to go up to 154, possibly even 160. That is the word from Eddie Hearn. Definitely will give up his 47-pound belts and move up. The probably end goal at this stage is Virgil Ortiz. He seems to be everyone's sort of target as, I suppose, the uncrowned number one in the division, which is really odd because he doesn't hold a belt, and he's regarded by most people as the number one 154-pounder out there. But no belt around his waist. I think the winner of Tszyu Fundora will be, I think, the name that everyone's going to be chasing. Even Ortiz. I think he might have one fight in the meantime, but I think he will be the one that, the winner of that fight will be the one they're all going to chase. There's a few other names in there. I think I said yesterday, Bolchok and Murtazaliyov, there's talks that they might fight. So the pieces are all starting to come together. But if Boots Ennis enters the equation at 154, wow, it just changes the dynamics completely, doesn't it? I think Boots and Ortiz would be a fantastic fight. The winner of that against the winner of Fundora, Tszyu, some really good fights to be made. But he didn't stop there. He said this is Hearn saying this, he's even looking to go to 160, which probably makes sense as well. You look back to in the days, with the great welterweights, lightweights, middleweights at the time, they all sort of went up in those divisions. They didn't stop at one, they went to two. If you're a welterweight champion, you moved up, the odds are you would end up at 160 as well at some stage in some type of fight. So some big opportunities for Boots Ennis. I'm really interested to see how he goes with the extra weight on. He's looked so good at 147 against limited opposition, though, I will say. How is he going to go as a big, strong, solid, healthy 154 or 160 pounder? It's intriguing, isn't it? And with those other gunfighters at 154, not so much, well, I was going to say not so much at 160, but geez, you've got Janabek up there, who's, I think, the big dog, but Adames, and I suppose to some extent Lara, who's still got a fair bit in the tank. Some really, really good fights that could be made, not just with Ennis involved, but all the 154s to 160s. So I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see some very, very good fights. All right, and just speaking of fighters that have gone up through the weights from sort of 135, 140, 147, right up to 160. This week, it was the anniversary of Thomas Hearns' knockout of Roberto Duran back in 1984. It was also Duran's birthday, and that went in conjunction, I should say, with the win over Davey Moore. He beat him on his birthday, and probably one of his most memorable victories. And it sort of got people sort of talking about I suppose the big four. It does come up every couple of years, doesn't it? Who was better, Hagler, Leonard, Duran, or Hearns? And it sort of got me thinking, especially when there's no real. I mean, there's a little bit of news in the news cycle at the moment, but not a lot. You know, we talk about it sort of every day, different things, but overall, not a lot happening. So I thought I'd just maybe use this sort of bit of the episode to talk a little bit about who I think was the best or the biggest of the big four. And I know it's always fraught with danger because everyone's got their own opinions, everyone's studied and think got the favourite fighters, so they all have their own ideas of who was the best of the big four. Look, let's just say how graced we were to have those four fighters in our lives, I suppose, and in the sport of boxing. But I mean, the case has got to be made, I suppose, for all of them that they were the biggest. I mean, you look at all of them. We'll start with, say, Marvellous Marvin Hagler. Fought at the one weight though, so that's got to take some points off. But either way, so you go through his resume. He had the win over Duran in '83, unimpressive win over Duran though. Really struggled against Roberto Duran, so you would think that's got to affect him negatively against a blown up sort of, I won't say a lightweight. I know that gets thrown around a lot. He's a blown up lightweight. I see Duran as more of a natural welterweight. Fought at lightweight as a younger type of fighter, and when he was fully fledged, I think he was more so that welterweight. That's the way I see him. So blown up welterweight. Then had the unbelievable win over Thomas Hearns, his career-defining win in the one of the best fights you'll ever see. But then came up against Leonard and lost a really disappointing decision. I know a lot of people dispute the fact that he lost, whatever. I think Leonard won. That's just my opinion. But he's got that on his resume. So he's got the win over Duran, the win over Hearns, and the loss to Leonard. Then you go to Sugar Ray Leonard. Yes, he had the unbelievable win over Hagler, one of the biggest upsets of all time. The draw with Hearns that a lot of people thought he lost, including me. But then in the first fight at welterweight, he stopped Thomas Hearns, but then also lost to Duran in conclusive fashion. So lots of twos and or fours and against for these guys. Then you go to Duran. Okay, universally recognised as probably the greatest lightweight of all time. I tend to disagree. I think that Pernell Whitaker was the number one for me. I think he would have beaten Duran. I think we've all just got all this sort of the legend of Duran over time. And make no mistake, he was a great fighter or great lightweight, but I just thought Pernell Whitaker was better. But anyway, that's an argument for another time. But beat Leonard at his peak at welterweight. Went up from lightweight and beat him. Then he had the fight with Hagler, where actually performed really, really well against Hagler, but lost a decision to him. Had a few ups and downs in the meantime as well against other fighters, by the way. Did Duran. Lost to a few fighters he should not have been losing to. And then he was knocked out, of course, by Hearns in '84 for the 154-pound title. So lots of twos and, again, ticks and crosses for Roberto Duran. And then you look at Hearns. He's probably the most pulverising one out of all of them, I reckon. So he lost disappointingly to Leonard in that first fight in '81. Pulverised Duran in '84, in I think his career best performance. But then was knocked out by Hagler in '85 in devastating fashion. Had the draw against Leonard in '89 as well. So there's lots of arguments either way, because let's look at it. You've got, Hagler with the really great win over Hearns, but then disappointing in two fights against Duran and Leonard. Then you got Hearns, who was fantastic against Duran, but was knocked out by Leonard and Hagler, but then had a disputed draw with Leonard. And then you've got Leonard, of course, who beat them all, but lost at probably when both fighters were at the peak, that fight against Duran. So you take points off of him as well. And then Hagler, I think the biggest thing for him is, again, even though the win over Hearns, struggling with or getting beaten by Leonard, struggling with Duran, only fighting at the one weight as well. It's hard to sort of gauge. But then, just so many, I suppose, fors and against each fighter. If I had to rank them, and I know this is obviously always a dangerous thing to do, There was almost a fifth one in there as well, by the way, Wilfred Benitez. Now, he didn't fight Hagler. If not, we would have had the big five. And we had, so Benitez, he's another one, throw him in there. Lost to Leonard and lost to Hearns, but beat Duran. So, anyway, but that's, again, another argument. But if I'm going to rank them all, again, fraught with danger, but I will say I would probably have Leonard as number one. Just really based on the Hagler win, I suppose, because again, he lost to Duran when both guys were at the peak. This is probably the main one to remember. Probably apart from Hagler, Hearns, all the rest of the times they fought, they weren't really at their peak, I don't think, or at the peak weights or whatever, or peak age, whatever. But Leonard did lose to Duran, but the win and the draw over Hearns, and then you marry that up with the win over Hagler, coming back from retirement 3 years out. I think that has got to be enough to put him over the line as number one. Second, look, I'm probably going to go for Hagler, but not conclusively. I almost think there's a bit of a gap between Leonard and the rest of them. The other three are really close. I'm going to have Hagler because the Duran one's a hard one because, of course, as I said, Duran was blown up from lightweight and welterweight. But the Hearns win for me is enough to put him at number two. As good as Hearns was, I think Hearns had the better resume as far as the titles and guys that he beat before and after Hagler, but the fact that when they fought, that Hagler knocked him out cleanly in 3 rounds. He beat Duran. The Leonard fight was disputed, so I think that's enough to put him at number two. But number 3 and 4 is really hard between Hearns and Duran. Now, a lot of people will probably say, no, it's got to be Duran. Geez, look what he did at lightweight and everything else. But he was a dominant champion at lightweight, and apart from Esteban de Jesus, didn't really have a lot of competition at lightweight. And he was a young fighter at that time. So I'm not really counting too much as far as the lightweight division goes. But when he went to welterweight again with the win over Leonard, but when they fought, he was beaten by Hearns. But it was, how old was he then? Geez, he would have been 32, 33, which back then seemed old, but not so much now, is it? But it's a tough one. And then you got Hearns, who went right up to light heavyweight and won world titles from welterweight to light heavyweight. An amazing fighter, but he did have those disappointing losses. I'm going to probably put Duran at number 3. I can't get out of my head the disappointing losses from Hearns against Leonard and Hagler in his 2 biggest hype fights. Because even though he beat Duran, at the time it wasn't really a big fight. It was just a fight between 2, former champ or current former champion. It didn't really have the build-up of all the big fights featuring all the other guys together. And I don't know why, but I just remember at the time it just didn't. But even though Hearns knocked Duran out, I just can't get past the fact that he was beaten in the unification fight with Leonard. Stopped, even though he did really well in that, but then he was knocked out by Hagler. I just think Duran's probably performed, even though he's lost against those guys. I just think his performances were better. I mean, you look at it, you break down the win-loss record. Leonard was, what did he have? He beat Duran twice. He beat Hearns. So his 4 wins, 1 loss and a draw was Leonard. Hagler was 2 wins, 1 loss. Hearns was, what do you have? 2 losses, 1 win and a draw. And Duran was 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. Yeah. So anyway, but we've got to pick someone. But that's my list anyway. I've got Leonard, Hagler, Duran, and Hearns. How do you guys have it? Let me know. Again, I'm sure there'll be arguments all round about who was better and who wasn't. But it's always a fun exercise, isn't it? But we'll leave it at that today. As I said, not a lot of news around. There's some big shows coming up, so we'll cover that obviously as we go. But I just thought I'd use today's episode just for something a little bit different while there's not much happening. So guys, give me your thoughts. Have a great Tuesday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.